It's the middle of the night. You're awake. You don't know why. The room is dark, the house is silent, and your eyes just opened like someone flipped a switch. You reach for your phone. 3:14 a.m. Your heart sinks. You have to be up in 3 hours, and now your mind is racing. About work, about money, about the fact that you're lying here staring at the ceiling instead of sleeping like a normal person. And you tell yourself the same thing you always do. Something is wrong with me. Millions of people do this every single night. They wake in the dark, they panic, they call it insomnia, and they reach for a pill to make it stop. But what if waking up at 3 in the morning isn't a disorder at all? What if it's the oldest, most natural thing your body knows how to do, and the real mistake is everything we did to stop it? Here's the uncomfortable truth. For most of human history, nobody slept the way you're trying to sleep right now. They didn't sleep in one long 8-hour block. They didn't sleep in one long 8-hour block. They slept twice. And the thing you call insomnia might just be your ancient body remembering how. Let's start with what we know for certain. In the late 1990s, a historian named Roger Ekirch was digging through old documents, not science papers, but diaries, court records, medical books, letters and poems going back hundreds of years. And he kept tripping over the same strange phrase, first sleep. And then, a little later in the same night, a second one. At first, he thought it was a fluke, a figure of speech. But the references kept coming. Over years of searching, Ekirch found more than 500 of them, in English, in French, in Italian, in Latin, spread across centuries and countries, all describing the same thing, like it was the most ordinary fact in the world. In court records, witnesses dated events by it without a second thought. A noise overheard after their first sleep. A fire spotted before the second. Nobody ever stopped to explain the phrase, because nobody needed it explained. People went to sleep. They woke up in the middle of the night, and then they went back to sleep again. Here's how it worked. People went to bed not long after dark. They slept for about 3 or 4 hours. That was the first sleep. Then, somewhere around midnight, they woke up, not in a panic, not reaching for anything. They just woke, and they stayed awake for an hour, sometimes 2, and then they lay back down for the second sleep until morning. And here's the important part. That gap in the middle of the night wasn't wasted time, and it wasn't dreaded. It was its own quiet little world. People used it. They lay in bed and talked to whoever was next to them. They thought about their dreams, which were still fresh. They prayed. Some got up and tended the fire, checked on the animals, or stepped next door to a neighbor whose candle was also lit. Couples used it to be together. One old medical book actually advised it was the best time to conceive a child because both people were finally rested. The hour belonged to no one. It was the most private, unhurried time in the entire day. Now, some of you are thinking the obvious thing. These are just old words in old books. Maybe first sleep was a turn of phrase. Maybe people are reading too much into it. Fair question. And the answer comes from a sleep lab. In the early 1990s, a researcher named Thomas Wehr at the National Institute of Mental Health ran an experiment. He wanted to know what human sleep looks like with no artificial light at all. So he took a group of people and, for a month, gave them 14 hours of darkness every night, roughly what a winter night looked like before the light bulb. No phones, no lamps, just dark. For the first few weeks, they slept like exhausted modern people in one long crash. But then something shifted. Their sleep broke in two. They would sleep for a few hours, wake up, lie peacefully awake for 1 or 2 hours in the middle of the night, and then drift back down for a second sleep. Exactly what Ekirch had found in those dusty diaries. happening on its own, in a lab, in modern bodies, the moment you took the light away. And it gets stranger. During that wakeful hour, the people in Wehr's study weren't anxious. Their bodies were flooded with prolactin, a hormone linked to calm, the same still, dreamy state you feel right after waking or deep in meditation. They didn't describe the waking as a problem. They described it as restful, peaceful, something close to the exact opposite of 3 a.m. panic. So if this is what humans naturally do, what happened? Why are you lying awake feeling broken instead of calm? Why did the second sleep disappear? 2 words: artificial light. For almost all of human history, when the sun went down, the world went dark and stayed dark. Night was long and empty and a little dangerous, so sleep stretched out to fill it, in 2 gentle halves with a waking island in between. But then we lit the night up. First candles for the rich, then oil lamps, then gas lamps marching down whole city streets, and finally the electric bulb, which erased the difference between day and night entirely. And once the night had light, the night had work. Shops stayed open later, coffee houses filled up after dark. The factory could run a second shift. Time that used to belong to rest suddenly belonged to production. Sleep got squeezed from both ends. People went to bed later and later, and the long, 2-part night collapsed into a single, short, efficient block. From now on, the clock and the factory whistle decided when you slept, not the sun and not your body. And within a couple of generations, we simply forgot. By the 1920s, the phrase first sleep had all but vanished from the language. The 2-sleep night, something humans had done for thousands of years, was gone, not because it stopped working, but because it no longer fit the schedule. We didn't start sleeping better, we just started sleeping on the clock's terms, the same way we now work on the clock's terms, and eat on the clock's terms, and live our whole lives glancing at a number on the wall. Here's the part that's hard to sit with. The thing you've been taught to fear, waking in the dark, lying there alone with your thoughts at 3 a.m, may not be a malfunction at all. It may be one of the most deeply human things your body still does. For thousands of years, that was the calmest hour your ancestors had. Now we wake into that same hour, see the time, remember everything we have to do, and fill it with dread. The waking never broke. Our relationship to it did. So tonight, when your eyes snap open in the dark and your heart starts to pound, try to remember this: you are not broken. You are not failing at sleep. You are a creature built for a long, dark, 2-part night, running on an 8-hour schedule that somebody else invented, under a sun we taught to never set. Your ancestors woke in the middle of the night and felt no fear. The house was dark. There was nowhere to be and nothing to fix. They lay there with their dreams, or whispered to someone they loved, and then they slept again, trusting that morning would come when it came. They weren't fighting the darkness. They weren't watching a clock. They weren't lying there counting the hours of rest they had left before they had to be useful again. They were simply awake in the quietest part of the night, and that was a